Hi there, I'm Sashi Sivram Krishna and welcome to my course Macroeconomics, a Modern Money Theory Perspective. We are in part 1 of the course Macroeconomics and Money. In lecture 15, we will look at Essentials of Modern Money 3. We have already seen that the essence of modern money is that it is a financial liability of the state. And this is apparent when you look at the currency note issued by your central bank in your country. So for instance, in India, the pink note on top bears the statement, I promise to pay the bearer a sum of rupees 2000. And the pound bill below that has the statement, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £1, or it might be £100 or whatever it is. Now, what is it that the governor of the central bank is promising to pay me? So if I walk into the central bank in India, which is the Reserve Bank of India, with this note of 2000 rupees, and I want something in exchange, it's very likely I'll get 20 100 rupee bills or maybe 10 200 rupee bills in exchange for the 2000 rupee note. At one time, there was an implicit promise to convert the rupee note into silver of a particular weight and value, which was called a rupee. So approximately 11 grams of silver of purity 96% was considered to be a rupee. And so if I walked into the bank with a 2000 rupee note, I would get 2000 of these coins of silver. That promise, like we said, no longer exists. There is no promise when it comes to fiat currency to convert these notes into precious metals or commodities of any kind. Now we settle claims arising in exchange with money of the state, and like we said, state money becomes generally acceptable for transactions within the private sector. And this is because people are aware that they have to ultimately settle obligations due to the state, primarily taxes, as well as many others like fines, penalties, only in these promissory notes. So it acquires a certain value, and people are willing to accept these promissory notes across the private sector. Now, the key aspect of a financial liability is that it must always appear in someone else's books of accounts as a financial asset. So every financial liability has a corresponding financial asset in someone else's books of accounts. The question is, who is that someone else? So we know that this financial liability occurs in the central bank's books of accounts as a liability. But who holds the financial asset? And the answer is quite obvious. It is you and me. So for example, in your balance sheet, you would have an entry cash on hand, and that's exactly the financial asset which appears in your books of accounts. Now you might think that it is only the state which can issue promissory notes. This is not true. Banks can issue promissory notes, which we call as checks, and these are drawn upon the liabilities of the bank, which are deposit accounts held in the names of individuals or firms or businesses. Similarly, businesses can issue their own promissory notes when they run trade credit with their suppliers, and so can individuals. So for instance, I have a line of credit with my neighborhood grocery store, and I promise to settle whatever dues are to be settled after a period of 3 months. So that would be an individual promissory note. So in a sense, everyone can issue money as a promissory note. The problem, however, is to get it accepted. So I might get it accepted by my grocery store, my individual promissory note, but then will it be acceptable amongst a larger population in general? And the answer is no. So the grocery store owner cannot use my IOU or promissory note to buy supplies in the market for his store. Whereas if he had taken the state's promissory note in settlement of the transaction between us, he could have used that promissory note to buy supplies in the market for his store. And that's the key difference between promissory notes issued by different institutions in an economy. When you look at most mainstream textbooks, you will see money defined as a set of assets used to settle claims that arise from exchange. Now, when money is defined in this way, what comes to mind is a commodity or a physical asset. A commodity perhaps like gold or silver, which are maybe in coins. But this essentially overlooks the difference between physical assets and financial assets. When you do not specify what kind of asset that we are talking about here, money is a very confusing notion. So for instance, if you think of money as a physical asset, then it will not appear in anybody else's books of accounts as a liability. So physical asset does not appear as a liability in anybody else's books of accounts, whereas a financial asset must appear in someone else's books of accounts as a financial liability. So for instance, if you hold gold, the gold will not appear in anybody else's books of accounts. It appears only in your books of accounts. Whereas if you hold a 100-rupee note, it must appear in someone else's books of accounts as a financial liability, and that would be in the books of accounts of the Reserve Bank of India. So it's very important to distinguish between physical and financial assets, and therefore it's always better, in fact, to think of money as debt or a promissory note or a financial liability, because that immediately raises the question that it has to be a financial asset in someone else's books of accounts. The notion of physical assets also gives a kind of stock concept to money, in the sense that there is a stock of assets which has to be distributed amongst the population, which can then be used as money. It's a physical stock of assets, which is essentially untrue. And therefore, let me repeat that modern money theory emphasizes the need and the necessity to define money as debt, a promissory note, an IOU, or a financial liability, and not as a physical asset, which it was perhaps at one point of time in history, but is no longer what we call as modern money.